Hello and welcome to another Yu-Gi-Oh deck profile. Today I'm doing my Fluffal deck, so we'll start off with the monsters. I start off with three Fluffal Dog. Fluffal Dog's effect is when it is normal summoned or special summoned from the hand, you can add an Edge Saber or Fluffal monster from your deck to your hand, except Fluffal Dog, only use it once per turn. Next I run 3 copies of King of the Swamp. King of the Swamp's effect is I can discard it from my hand, provide polymerization, and it can be used as any fusion material monster. Next I run 3 copies of Edgimp Chain. Edgimp Chain is a monster effect is that when it declares an attack I can add an Edgimp Chain from deck to hand. If this card is sent from the hand or field to the graveyard, you can add a fright for a card from your deck to your hand, only use one effect. Only use one Edgimp Chain effect per turn and only once that turn. Okay. Next I run 2 copies of Fluffal Bear. Fluffal Bear's effect is I can send this card from my hand to the graveyard to set one toy blender directly from my deck to my spend travel card zone. I contribute this card to target 1 polymerization in your graveyard, add it to your hand, and use 1 effect of Fluffal Bear once per turn. Next I run 2 copies of Fluffal Owl. Fluffal Owl's effect is that when it's almost special summon from the hand, add 1 polymerization from my deck to my hand, pay 500 life points basically to perform a polymerization for a fright for a monster. I can only use 1 Fluffal Owl effect per turn. Next I run 2 copies of Edgimp Sabers. Edgimp Sabers' effect is that if this card is in the graveyard, I can place 1 card from your hand to the top of your deck, special summon it in defense position, once per turn effect activation again. I run 2 copies of Fluffal Sheep. Fluffal Sheep is if I control a Fluffal monster except Fluffal Sheep, you can special summon this card from your hand. You can return 1 other Fluffal monster you control to the hand, special summon 1 Edgimp monster from the hand or graveyard. Only use this effect of Fluffal Sheep once per turn. Next I run 2 copies of Fluffal Wings. Fluffal Wings is a very useful card, as if this card is in your graveyard and you control a toy vendor, you can banish this card from your graveyard, then target 1 Fluffal monster from your graveyard and banish it. If you do draw a card, then you can send a toy vendor you control to the graveyard, and if you draw another, then you get the destroy effect of you get the destroy effect of toy vendor, allowing you to add any Fluffal or Edgimp Sabers to your hand from your deck. The last monster I run is 1 copy of Fluffal Cat. And Cat has an effect that if it's sent to the graveyard as a fusion material for a fusion summon, you can target 1 polymerization in your graveyard, add it back to your hand. So that's the monsters done. We'll move on to spells now. First of all, I run 3 copies of Fright for Fusion. Fright for Fusion allows me to fusion summon 1 Fright for Fusion monster from your extra deck by banishing fusion materials listed on it from your side of the field or graveyard. You can only activate it once per turn. Then I run 2 copies of Polymerization. Polymerization is the standard fusion card really. Allows you to fusion summon from your side of the field or from your hand. Next I run 2 copies of Toy Vendor. Toy Vendor's effect is once per turn you can discard 1 card to draw a card and reveal it. If it's a Fluffal monster, you can special summon 1 monster from your hand. otherwise discard the card. This card is sent from the field to the this card is sent to the graveyard in any way, shape, or form. You can either Edge of Sabers or one Fluffal monster. I kind of covered that previously with what's the monster's name? Well, Wings. I kind of covered that effect with Wings anyway. Next, I run 2 copies of Instant Fusion. Instant Fusion. I used to run 1, but I found that 1 wasn't that useful in this deck, so I switched to 2, and that's helped the consistency out a little bit. Not drastically, but a bit. And this is you can pay 1,000 life points, special summon 1 level 5 or lower fusion monster, aka Elder Entity Norden, is the only target in this deck, and of course Sheep, but primarily Norden, who I'll get onto when I get onto the fusion, well, the extra deck. So, yeah, that's really about it for that. Then I run 1 copy of Mystical Space Typhoon to destroy back row, 1 card in the back row, 1 Fight for Factory, which effect reads, you can banish 1 Polymerization spell card or a fusion spell card from your graveyard, except Diffuse Wave Motion. Fusion summon 1 Fight for Fusion monster from your extra deck, using monsters from your hand or outside the field as fusion materials. Then, if this card is sent to the graveyard, you can target one of your banished Fight for Fusion cards, add it to your hand, and use each effect once per turn. The final spell card for this deck is Soul Charge. That is, target any number of monsters in your graveyard, special summon them, lose 1,000 for each. Then you cannot conduct your battle phase. Basically, it allows me to get cards if I don't have any. If I save draw Polymerization, I don't have any targets, and they're all in my graveyard, I'm not banished, I can summon them back. Then we'll move on to traps. I run not very many traps at all in this deck, really. But let's start anyway. Let's go for. Well, let's start with this one. I run 3 copies of Fight for March. Fight for March's effect is when an opponent's spell or trap or monster effect is activated, that targets a Fight for monster, so that's any of the Fluffal fusions, really. Negate the activation if you do destroy that card. Then you can send one of the targeted Fight for monsters to the graveyard, and if you do, special summon a level 8 or higher Fight for fusion monster from your extra deck. It's treated as a fusion summon. Banish it during my next end phase. Level 8 fusion wise, there's really only 1 target, and that is Sabertooth. But Sabertooth effect I'll get into when we get onto that anyway. Next, I run 3 copies of Fiendish Chain. There we go, Fiendish Chain. Target 1 face effect monster on the field. That target's effects are negated, and it cannot attack. Basically, quite useful for just stalling out. Then I run 1 Mirror Force that destroys all attack position monsters my opponent controls when they attack. And finally, Compulsory Evacuation Device is it just returns target 1 monster from the field, return that target to the hand. So that's the main 40 card deck done. So let's move on to the extra deck. So let's start off with Sabertooth. Fight for Sabertooth, that I run 3 of. His effect where he can be fusioned with 1 Fight for Fusion monster and 1 more Fluffal and Edge Imp monsters. When this is fusion summoned, you can target 1 Fight for monster in your graveyard, special summon it. All Fight for monsters you control gain 400 attack. If this card was fusion summoned using 3 or more fusion materials, it cannot be destroyed by battle or by card effects. So that's a very useful card for this deck. It allows very mass board recovery. It's really good. Next, I run 3 copies of Fight for Tiger. Fight for Tiger's effect is summoned with Edge Imp Sabers and 1 or more Fluffal monsters. When this card is fusion summoned, you can target cards on the field up to the number of fusion monsters used for its summon. Destroy them. All Fight for monsters you control gain 300 attack for each Fluffal and Fight for monster you control, but you can only control 1. So that's really nice and strong. That needs to be there. Okay. Then I run 3 copies of Fight for Sheep. Fight for Sheep's effect is that it is summoned with Agent Chain and 1 Fluffal monster. This card attacks with attack. Your opponent cannot activate cards or effects until the end of the damage step. This card is destroyed by battle and sent to the grave. Or this card is in your possession and destroyed by an opponent's card effect and sent to the grave. You can special summon this card. If you do, it gains 800 attack and use it once per turn. Now we'll get on to the last couple of cards. All of these I run 1 copy of. Fight for Wolf is summoned with Agent Sabers and 1 more Fluffal monsters. It can attack with the number of fusion, I think. Yeah, number of fusion materials used, it can attack that many times. That's a 2000 attack point. So as its default attack it is 2000, so that can be an OTK if it doesn't get in the way. Next I run Fight for Leo. He is summoned with Agent Saw. That instead of having to run Saw, I use King of the Swamp. And it cannot be special summoned by any other ways apart from fusion. You can target one face-up monster your opponent controls, destroy it, and if you do, inflict damage equal to the destroyed monster's original attack. You use it once per turn, cannot be special. Yeah. Elder Entity Norden. One of my main targets for instant fusion in this deck. Because there's no other way of me getting it out otherwise. When it's fusion summoned, special summon a level 4. Is it 4 lower? Or just level 4? Yeah, level 4 or lower. Monster in your graveyard special summon it, its effects are negated. And banish it when this card leaves the field. Then I run 2 Xyz monsters in this deck. 1 Abyss Dweller. That means that I can attach a Xyz material to stop graveyard effects activating. Then 1 Castell. That means I can detach 1 Xyz material from this card, target 1 face-up monster on the field, change it to face-down defense. Or the main effect that I use, attach 2 material, return 1 other face-up card on the field, shuffle it into the deck. You can only use You can only use 1 Castell effect once per turn. So that's the end of my Fluffal deck profile. We'll have a look at how it performs.